Hey everybody, how's everyone doing? It's Liz. Hello, hello. I am about to have a conversation with the extraordinary Danielle Henderson, the author of The Ugly Cry. Welcome everyone, welcome to the Onward Book Club. Let me see if I can find her. Oh my God, she's here. Look, she's so good. She's coming in. Danielle Henderson, everybody. Hi everyone. Hi Emma Isaacs. Hi family. Are you laying down?
No, I have my iPad turned. Although
Awesome. Is it laying down or lying down? Some writer island. Are you horizontal?
Yeah, I look to show up sideways.
I love the idea of you telegraphing how seriously you take this interview by when you come, you're just like, hello. Oh, hi guys. Pandemic, a little tired.
Am I still sideways or am I okay now?
You're fine now. You're
okay,
you're
cool.
fully vertical.
In that case, let me lay down.
It's so good. I was going to film this from the bathtub, so one way or another, it all works out.
I had a neighbor, my neighbor growing up, who actually didn't make it into this book, but she's definitely going to be in the next one.
Oh, goodness. First of all, best news that there's a next book. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, completely. And she was this like beautiful hippie lady, and she's like, I'm going to write a book one day, and I'm going to call it Dissertations from the Bathtub. And I was like, you should do that. You should definitely do that.
That is so good. Okay, so I'm about to turn off the comments, but everybody send some love to Danielle. See all those hearts? This is all everyone just from all over the world. Argentina, Oklahoma, Colombia, Ukraine.
France. Bonjour, comment ça va?
Whoa! Okay, no need to show off. That's cool. We all know you're smart, Danielle. Bonjour, she's Trey Smart.
Also, I wore the shirt that you texted about.
Hi, Saudi Arabia. Yes. Okay, we'll be getting to that. Uruguay. Oh my God, I'm so excited. Okay, Lakeland, Florida. Okay, Sweden. Talk Sweden.
Amsterdam.
Hello, Maui. We could do this all day, and it would be very fun because it is
completely
quite a lovely Netherlands.
Aww.
Hi, Russia. Okay, I'm going to cut you guys off now, and you're going to listen because I don't want to be looking at your beautiful names scrolling across Danielle's beautiful face. So hang on one second while I do that. Turn off commenting.
Goodness.
Great. Okay.
All over the world.
We're all alone now. Just me and you and a few hundred people.
Us.
Everyone, this is Danielle Henderson. She is so many things. She is a TV writer. She was a magazine writer. She created Feminist Ryan Gosling, which was one of the greatest things that ever happened on the internet. She is a podcast host of a fantastic podcast called I Saw What You Did, which is hilarious and fantastic. And of course, the reason that she is here today is because I felt it was important to make sure she woke up from her nap and invite her to come and be on the Onward Book Club to discuss her incredible, beautiful, gorgeous new memoir called The Ugly Cry. Oh, Lord. Oh, Danielle, this book. So
thank you so much for chatting with me and just being here and reading it, and just you've been so gracious for so long, so thank you so much.
It is not a sacrifice for me to spend the day getting to talk to you. Believe me, it is a joy and a delight. This book is so extraordinary. It's the true story of that time that Danielle got abandoned by her mother. That one time. This is the thing about this book. This book has no excuse to be funny. This book should not be funny. There's nothing funny about this story. And yet Danielle is one of the most truly hilarious authors who I have ever had the joy to encounter. So what happened was her mother ended up abandoning Danielle and her young brother with her grandmother, dropping them off one day, never to return. Because she was chasing a very abusive, very dangerous, very horrible man who had become her boyfriend. And Danielle ended up being raised by her grandmother, who is one of the most vividly articulated characters ever to exist on the page, a foul-mouthed, uncompromising, chain-smoking, super pissed off to have to be raising kids again after she thought that was over hero, an absolute hero of the story. And So what I want to begin with is your voice is so strong. And I think memoir particularly has to all be about the voice. Um, Everyone has a story. Some people have devastating stories. Some people have wonderful stories, but not everybody can tell a story. So before we even begin, I just want to know like where it came from, because it's such a singular, powerful, funny, without being, you have this gift of being super funny without being cynical, because there's a tremendous amount of heart in this story too. And it is not easy to be, it is not easy to be funny without being cynical. And it is also not easy to lead the reader into the nightmare that you were in and also lead us out safely as you did yourself. So where did your voice come from, if you are even able to identify that?
I know. I feel like it's not just one place or one thing, because my writing voice just is very much me. Like, it's who I am as a person. It's how I talk to people. It's how I communicate. No matter what job I've had, no matter what situation I've been in, that's just kind of how I talk. But I think developing the voice on the page was something that I think it just came from being an avid reader. I don't know if that makes any sense, but kind of having other people show the way, and that it's okay to use that voice that you use in everyday life to explain yourself, that it's okay to just tell those same stories. So I think I kind of just credit it to other memoirists, other writers, and just really having the courage, I guess, to just kind of be who I am in book form. And you never know how it's going to be received. But I couldn't do it any other way. I think that the worst thing I can imagine is like trying to write like somebody else.
Yeah.
I just feel like that's just never appealing to me as a reader. So I didn't want to be that kind of writer.
I think you've hit on such an interesting puzzle for people, especially when they're starting off as writers. And there are a lot of people who will be listening to this who are aspiring writers or new writers, which is you need to be influenced, right? Like, so the first part of your answer was, I did a lot of reading and I saw that it was possible and I had a lot of influence. And then the second thing is you also need to be original. And that's the tricky bit right there, because I know that I started my writing doing a lot of imitating, and I think you sort of have to almost imitate until you can innovate, or until you can be natural, which is sometimes the hardest thing in the entire world to be.
I completely agree, and I think, and it's a practice. It's part of the practice of writing, and it is kind of getting out of your own way, especially when you're first starting out. And I think this is talk about throwback. I'm going to bring everybody back for a moment. I think blogging helped me with that, because
what's that? Blogging?
I think blogging. I know, right?
How about zines? When you were writing zines, did that help?
Zines also help. Zines are more like cut and paste, though. But I truly think it was blogging, because I was able to, several times a day, if necessary, kind of put my thoughts somewhere. And in the beginning, it was just mine, and then when I started meeting other friends who had blogs and kind of had their own voice, and we just kind of encouraged each other.
Yeah.
And that was really invaluable. It was invaluable. Yeah.
I have to, okay. I want to give, if those of you who have not yet read, we're speaking with Danielle Henderson. I always feel like a TV host when I get to say this part. I'm Jane Pauley, and we're here just talking about The Ugly Cry. That's a real big callback from the 90s. Danielle Henderson, The Ugly Cry, such a spectacular memoir. I could talk about how great it is, but I just want to say this is the part where I fell absolutely in love with you on the page. My copy of your book is filled with underlines and exclamation points and stars and hearts and clovers, like all of the signals of excitement in the margins. But just this is what I mean by your voice. She's describing the scene of her birth. First of all, I love an author describing the scene of her own birth, because that connotes like true command. Like, let me take you all back to.
It's like a super villain. I'm like, why am I starting with birth?
Or a Dickens novel would start with like, I was born, So this is what you have to say, which brings us everything we need to know about your family, about your grandmother, and about the 70s. When I was born, absolutely no micromanagerial bonanza. Oh, sorry. When I was born, absolutely no one was prepared for me to arrive. Pregnancy wasn't at all like the checklist heaving micromanagerial bonanza that it is today. But you'd think that someone would have at least been clocking contractions with mild interest in between popping cans of tap and smoking cigarettes down to the filter. Then you jump to the car ride to the hospital where your amazing grandmother and her equally amazing friend, Nana Dar, are driving to the hospital while your mother is in massive contractions in the middle of the night and your grandmother is so pissed off she had to be woken up for it. And you write, Nana Dar and grandma were definitely chain smoking the entire 30-minute drive there. My mom was basically in the backseat crowning while those two were up front joking about how she better not give birth in the car, all the while flicking clouds of ash on my fontanelle. I love you. Oh my God. That is your voice. Like, that is to me the encapsulation of like, just, oh, it's so extraordinary.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, it is. It is. I mean, that is of course a story that has been retold to me several times. So that was my creative imagination and how that scene looked. Having hung out with those people later in life, I'm like, I know what this looked like because that's how they were with everything. We went to, you know, Perkins and they were chain smoking and flicking ash everywhere. So why would that stop when I was being bored? But yeah,
so that is a perfect example of future memoirists of how to take a story about you that you've heard told a million times and make it your own, namely in this case with the word fontanelle, which I am absolutely certain was not the word that your grandmother was using to describe your birth.
No.
That is what takes it right over the top into comedy. That is comedy writing right there. I want to talk about your grandmother. We have to, because she's such an extraordinary character and such an extraordinary real life figure. This is the kind of loving, nurturing, gentle care that Danielle got growing up. Her grandmother gave her such wise advice as, a man wants to put his hands on you, carry a little secret knife, cut his throat, ask questions later. Or if you complained in the middle of the night that your eyes were blurry, she would say, that's what you get for reading those fucking books all night when you should be sleeping. Or my favorite, the scene where you punch a girl in the face because she's trying to change the long established rules of kickball, which is a criminal offense, as we know. Criminal. Then you're so upset by what you've done, you run home crying to your grandmother, who can't figure out why you're the one crying when you hit somebody. And then you get in trouble because, and this is my favorite line of hers in the book, you never run away from a fight, you hear? You start it, you finish it. Her eyes were wide and wild. Her dentures slipped forward slightly with every hard T. If you don't go back there and beat that little girl's ass, you're going to have to come in here and fight me. To which young Danielle replies, I don't want to finish it. Grandma says, that's too fucking bad. Tears started dripping from my head again, prompted by the bone-deep confusion running through me. I came into the house looking for comfort, having just punched my former best friend directly in the face, but somehow instead was being forced to choose between fighting Angela again or punching my own grandmother. This is the shittiest interview I have ever done because all I'm doing is reading your book to you, which you have already read. Because you wrote
this is great. This is the best.
Funny.
This is the best possible advertisement for my book.
I forgot to tell you guys, I'm going to be reading the audiobook for The Ugly Cry. I think only I can really bring this story to life, apparently.
It's beautiful. And it's true, like these are the circumstances with which I was raised. And it's like when you're raised by that person, it's loving in a very different way, and it does not feel like love at the time. It's very, it's very hidden. It's very obsequious kind of love. And yeah, I felt like, for most of my childhood, even before I was 10 and kind of dropped off with her, for most of my childhood, she was constantly telling me to be strong and to stand up for myself before I even knew that I had to be or the reasons why. And so when it did come time for me to have to like exhibit any kind of strength, it was a conflict for me because I thought, well, she's telling me that I have to do this. But in the case of, punching this girl in the face, I'm like, I always heard that violence was wrong, but not in my house.
No, you know why you thought that, Danielle, was because you were a latchkey kid who watched all those after school specials.
Exactly.
But you were actually living in real life.
In real life.
Which is what it seems like your grandmother was trying to prepare you for. And I think that there's a kind of parenting, or in this case, grandparenting, that I've always found very fascinating. I had a weird version of this with my own mom, which is like, the world is really hard. You know, the world as I know it, this is like how it goes inside the head of the caregiver. The world as I know it is a very difficult, very hard place. No one's ever going to take care of you. I'm your caretaker. I want to teach you that no one is ever going to take care of you by teaching you to take care of your fucking self. and in this weird snake eating its own tail way, thus creating in the house a small model of the terrors of the world that you can practice on, I guess, so that when you go, I mean, what is that? How do you interpret that?
It's kind of like, you know, like, let me be the first person to break your heart just so that you have a way to talk to me when your heart is broken. It doesn't make practical sense, but it somehow makes emotional sense. And that's, I think, the conflict, right? Is that it makes sense emotionally. Because you are a little bit more prepared for things, but also it's like, wouldn't it be nice to have just gotten a hug
every once in a while?
Wouldn't it have been nice if my own home was a safe place for me to exhibit, you know, my emotional range? Yeah, it was really, again, something in the moment that in the moment I didn't recognize as useful. I really wanted what everyone else had. I felt like for so much of my life and my childhood, I wanted what other people had. And I wanted a house, and I didn't want to live in an apartment. And I wanted two parents. I didn't want my grandparents. I wanted, you know, new sneakers, not like new discount sneakers from Sears. And like, you know, I was always looking outside. So it took me a very long time to kind of look at the situation that I was presented with and the reality of my life and say, actually, no, this is what I had. And it's really good in so many ways. Like, it was really useful for me to have a different experience from other people that, again, at the time I wasn't really able to appreciate.
Did you know as a kid that your grandmother was funny?
Completely.
Okay.
Oh, completely.
Okay.
Because even when she wasn't being, you know, trying to teach us lessons and being cruel, she would just watching TV with her was hilarious. And just, you know, especially listening to her with her friends. I think that's where I started to be really perceptive and to try to pay attention, because there was nothing like listening to her laugh with Patsy, laugh with Nana Dar, and I just wanted to know what was making them laugh so hard. And so I really just, she was always hilarious to me, always hilarious to me.
I think this is something that I really identified with when you write about that in the book. And I've often wondered in my life, it's at the beginning of me wanting to be a writer, wanting to be around interesting characters. For me, my equivalent of that was my grandfather and all my uncles in the days when they were all active alcoholics before they became recovered alcoholics. And the outrageousness of those dinners at my grandfather's house, where like no one at all censoring themselves because there was an 8-year-old girl sitting at the table, like hearing stuff that was way beyond my capacity to understand. And then hearing these like titans roaring with laughter, cigarette smoke everywhere, alcohol everywhere. Like if I could go back and have one meal of my life, it would be one of those, because I
completely agree.
And I feel like that's where I learned to tell jokes. It's where I learned to tell a story. It's where I learned how that banter works. And it feels like you got that as well with that preparation.
Because I kind of, it's like I had to be interesting to get my grandma's attention.
Yes.
You know, like I had to be smart. I had to have something to say. So I had to cultivate that in order to be on her level. She never wanted to come down to my level. Yeah. It's not like it is nowadays where it's like she's not getting down on the floor and playing Legos. It's like, you join me at the kitchen table and tell me about your day in full sentences.
Yeah.
So that you can come to my level. And I think that was really useful, because I think that, again, like I developed a very different sense of humor and a very different sense of seeing the world than my friends and the people around me. Because I wanted more of that. Like, it was such a good feeling, and it was so good to see it enacted that I wanted more of that. So.
And when this is a pitch I'm making for conditional love parents. When that like affirmation is given to you because you earned it, rather than because they have to, and you know that you got the honest laugh, like you made the really funny grown-up laugh. Like there's a feeling about like that is one of the greatest feelings in the entire world, because you did it. Like you actually earned the right to sit at that table with people who, in my mind, as you described to her friend Nana Dar and Patsy, I was picturing like the aunts, Marge's sisters on The Simpsons, like
big red bouffants, both of them. Yes.
Cigarettes right down to the ash, you know, just like
right down. And it it also really shaped my perception of gender in an interesting way,
Uh-huh.
because I feel like what you're saying, you know, with your uncles and kind of sitting around the table, that if I could hang, you know, if
Yeah.
I could tell stories and be funny, or just be respectful and be quiet and kind of out of the way, then it didn't matter that I was just a little girl. You know, it
Right.
didn't matter that, you know, I wasn't pushed into a realm where it's like, well, that's not for you. It's
Right.
kind of a deeper development of self that doesn't have anything to do with gender. And, you know, I've always said that, like, you know, my grandma would never call herself a feminist, but she's the first feminist I ever knew.
Right.
She was just, it was ingrained in her to just not fall prey to gender as an excuse. So that's kind of where I started to learn that as well.
If feminism means having all the power, then yes, your grandmother was absolutely that person.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
and she was that outside of the home as well, too, right? Yeah.
Forced to be reckoned with.
Yeah.
I mean, the way she even made friends in that town, you know, that my town was not full of Black people.
Yeah.
And they'd moved from the city to the country, where, you know, where I am now. And so she had to really be forceful about even making friends with people who were really prejudiced.
Yeah.
And who, you know, she had to work her way in, but she said, you know, I'm doing this. I want friends here. I want a life here. I want my kids to have a life here. So yeah, she's a very powerful being.
When you just said that the town that you grew up in was not full of Black people, that was a very delicate understatement. Can you elaborate on that with a little less delicacy?
Yeah, let me take the diplomacy away.
I mean, from my understanding of reading your book, like, you were the only Black family in the town. Am I correct?
It was like 2 Black families in the
Yeah.
town.
Yeah.
For the longest time, and then a third family moved in from the city. It was very exciting.
Was
Very
it?
exciting. Oh, it was for me. It was
Yeah.
very exciting.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a predominantly white town, and it's a farming town, but it's also so close to New York City that it's a wealthy town, and it's a place where people would, you know, wanted to raise their kids, but that's not where they worked. But they could get to New York very easily. So it was a real mix of different kinds of class, but one race. You know, wasn't a very
Just the one race. Economic diversity without diversity.
completely. And
Well,
so
they
it's
had
like
the one kind of diversity, Danielle. Come
Yeah.
on.
I mean, it could have been worse. There are towns nearby that were much, much worse. But yeah, it was isolating. And it was so, again, a different way that I learned, or had to learn, like, how to be in the world and be myself and kind of develop some kind of esteem or self-esteem.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't getting anything at all from my surroundings. And so now when I look at the world and I see, you know, people saying that representation matters and kind of making more of an active effort to be inclusive, it blows my mind that I've been able to see that in my lifetime, because it was so different for me growing up, and it was full of shame and guilt. The shame came from feeling like there was something wrong with being Black from the outside world, and then the guilt of knowing that that wasn't true.
Yeah.
But not being able to exhibit that. So yeah, it was a real mix of complicated emotions.
It sounds from what you wrote that the shame and the guilt were also externally foisted upon you. You talk about being in kindergarten with your otherwise sounds like absolutely lovely and extraordinary, kind teacher who was a transformative figure in your life, but who also was demented enough and like tone deaf enough to sit with a child when you were drawing pictures of your family and harangue you with questions about why you don't have a father, which also to me feels very 1970s. You know, just and you just kept saying, I don't know. I have a grandfather, but I don't know why I mean, it's such a horrifying scene to read, because it's like, somebody shut that woman up. You know,
I
like,
know.
well, you
and
have to
she probably
draw.
thinks,
Yeah, she's like, well,
she
you
thinks
have
you're
to
doing a
draw a
good thing.
father because we're drawing
Yeah.
families.
You gotta.
Yeah.
And there were so many times in school, particularly like when, you know, they would want us to do things for Father's Day and Mother's Day, and, you know, to make gifts at the end of the school year because Father's Day is coming up and we're not going to be in school. And I would be broken inside by this notion of like, I'm making something for someone that doesn't exist. And them not realizing how hard that is, because it's not Grandfather's Day, and it's not, you know, and my grandfather worked a lot. You know, he was present, but he wasn't really the one who raised us, because he was constantly at work, and gambling, but at work.
That's a kind of work too. That's also that's a hard job.
I'll pay the rent out of OTB. But it was devastating, and it was an emotional devastation that I did not have a voice for.
Yeah.
And I think that as I started to become a writer, I wanted to be able to find a voice for those emotions and to find a place to put that feeling, because I just remember being just so shattered by it.
There's one of the things I also think is very interesting about memoir in general is where do you put the, if you're directing this film, right, and you write for TV too, so like you have a very great, and you love movies, so you have a very cinematic, you're a very cinematic writer. Like your descriptions are I'm watching this movie, which I, like parens, want to ask you about whether that might actually happen with this, but where do you put the lens when you're telling this story? So when I read the flap copy on the hardcover, and it said, you grew up tall, black, and weird in a mostly white town, I was like, oh, this is going to be a story about that. And it isn't really. You don't really focus the lens that much on, although I'm sure you could have. I'm sure you could have written an entire book, an entire thesis, and that could have been any number of different kinds of books. Instead, it's a much more intimate interior family story. But I was wondering where your choices were on that, and why you elected to bring the camera indoors rather than into the larger. I mean, you touch on it, like you address it, but it's definitely, this is not a treatise on what it's like growing up Black in a white community. That happens to be the backdrop in which the story was set, but you're bringing it in. I'm saying the same thing again 9 times. I'll let you answer the question.
I love options.
Great. You know what? Pick any thread you like out of that paragraph that I just said and go in any direction you want. How about that?
I love an option. Well, it's kind of twofold. One is that, I wouldn't say I have low confidence as a writer, but I do feel like anything I write, I want it to be worthwhile for people to read. If I'm going to be making it public, I want people to want and need to read it. And I've heard that story before, like lately. I think if this book came out 15 years ago, I would have written that story. Right. But we've been hearing that story more and more, and it doesn't feel like a story that I could offer any unique perspective on, because it is just kind of a facet of how I was raised and what happened to me. But the interior story is one that I haven't seen before. Right. And I haven't seen this structural story of people who grow up without the traditional family structure, but still find joy and, heart and a real emotional foundation. And so I wanted to write something that felt fresh to me, but also felt fresh in the world. And, I do know a lot of people who were raised in non-traditional families now, but I didn't when I was a kid.
Right.
And I felt like that was an important story to put in the world through my own experience. I think that we've seen that story in terms of, adoption narratives or, refugee narratives in lots of different ways. And I don't ever want to write something that I feel like I'm ill-equipped to explain. And I can't write about that experience fully because I only had such a small slice of it for such a tiny amount of time. But my emotional life has been vast. And so I wanted to kind of focus on that a little bit. And my family structure is strange, and it's, painful, and it's not resolved. So it's something that kind of helps me move through my current emotions about, being a part of this family.
It felt to me as I read, so I read it twice, once just to read it, and then again to prepare for this incredibly articulate interview that I'm giving to you, which consists of me just reading you your own text. So
if it helps, I am the same exact way.
Let me read you a chapter. And for those of you who are just joining me, we are talking about The Ugly Cry, an extraordinary memoir by my guest, Danielle Henderson. But what I noticed on the second reading, because I was looking like writer to writer at structure, because I'm always really interested in the game of how you put story together. And it felt to me like the book has sort of 3 emotional movements. And it's like the first one is sort of it was almost like Dante, and it was like there was a paradise of childhood, and it was a demented, chaotic paradise. But the way that you describe your childhood is so full of, there's a lot of insanity, but there's so much joy. There's so much, like, there's joy in everything. Like, just, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm going to read you this is this is part one.
Oh, I love it.
When the indoor rules were simple. This is about your mom's rules about you and your brother Corey. The indoor rules were simple. Did you come home? You're talking now to the reader. Did you come home from school, grab a glass, pour yourself some juice, and camp out in front of the TV watching cartoons? Congratulations, Anne of Green Gables. Your childhood was fucking rad. We were not allowed to touch the glasses anymore after I broke the Hamburglar tumbler from the one set of McDonald's fine china. We didn't have juice boxes because we were on welfare, and I would have rather chewed tinfoil than recreationally drank powdered milk. And so you're layering stuff here where you're showing us poverty, by an American standard, but there's the writing itself is so full of this sort of joy and power. The power of you as an observer, the power of you as a kid, the power of your mom struggling to hold the family together. And the whole first third of the book feels like that. There's like this forceful engine of energy. And then Luke comes in. Your mother takes up with a man. And from the second he arrives on the page, I remember the first time I read the book, I just felt like this leaden. You did such a great job communicating, like, a terrible thing is about to happen. And then a terrible thing does happen. He moves in. He's incredibly mentally, physically abusive, sexually abusive to you. Like, you're now living in a horror movie with the call coming from inside the house, and there's no humor in that section. And you not retreat, but you present, I felt like, in a very journalistic way at that point, like almost like you're a police report. This is what happened, and there's a light that goes out. And then this is what I mean about bringing a reader into darkness and then bringing them back out of it. You manage in the third act, it's like, the question is, how is Danielle going to ignite her life again after this horror? And then your mother leaves you and runs off with him after he's wrecked your innocence. And she goes off with him, and now you don't have a mother anymore. And the last third of the book to me feels like a heist movie, because I feel like she's going to get out of that fucking town. She's going to get to college. I don't know how. She's been abused. She's been abandoned. She's been neglected. She's being raised by a geriatric motherfucker. She's going to get somehow but how? And it's like, how are they going to get away with, so did you, what was it like for you emotionally writing each one of those sections? And if you also, where am I wrong? If you feel like I've misrepresented the emotional of the book, correct me.
Actually, I'm quite astonished because you're the first person to really nail it in that way, because that is exactly how it felt writing it, especially that second part of the book. I felt like I was a reporter. I felt like I'm just saying, this is what happened, this is what happened, and this happened, and this happened, because at the time that it was happening, I was deadened. I was not feeling that full range of emotions that I felt as a kid. I wasn't paying attention as much because it was scary to look everywhere. And it was, terrifying to hear anything, because anything that I saw or heard could be used against me in a violent way. And so I was completely shut down, and I wanted to convey that with the writing. When I was writing about, taking care of my little brother, my mom and this man had a kid, and she was working nights and he was doing drugs, and, I would take care of the baby, and it was really methodical, but I wanted to convey that exhaustion of, like, I was 10 years old and taking care of a baby, for the most part. And there's no way to make that funny. And there's no way to make that seem now, in retrospect, like anything other than what it was, which was a different kind of violence and a different kind of abuse. So that whole second part of the book, I expected that to be the most difficult thing to write. It was actually not. I won't say it was easy, but it was not the most difficult part of the book to write, because I could come at it from an emotional distance. What was difficult, and that first part of the book was really difficult to write, because I did not expect to find such grace with my mother. And I didn't expect to find that I could describe her in such a loving way, because I don't love her. We don't have love right now. And we probably never will. That's just kind of a sad reality, but it's the truth. And it was strange to go back to a time where I loved her And I think that was really the most complicated part of the book for me to
Oh,
write, because it was such joy. You know, the bad things you can talk about, you know, or I make this about me. I can talk about, because I've learned how to talk about the negative and painful things in my life. It took me a very long time, and through the process of writing this book, to learn how to experience joy again and to talk about love again. So that was really the most painful part. And then that third part of the book, which is exactly the flow of how I wanted that book to go, with the help of my editor, my beautiful editor, Andrea Schultz. You know,
Andrew
we outlined,
Schultz.
oh, the best in the biz. And, we outlined this book together. And
Uh-huh.
when I first started working on it, we sat in her office in New York, and she just kind of asked me, "What stories do you want to tell?" Excuse me. She asked, you know, "What stories do you want to tell?" And that's how we created the outline. Um, Hang on.
Take your time. We'll talk among ourselves.
Exactly. Just read some more. I got a Diet Coke break.
Hit that Diet Coke.
I get one a day, and I have to drink it before 3 p.m. or else I'm shattered for the night. This is
I
my
like
life
the
at
way that you say
44.
you get one a day, as though there's like
Yeah.
a warden who is
Yeah.
distributing the Diet Cokes, and it's like, here's your, you know, here's your ration.
Here you go, lady. I fully expect someone to like knock on my door and be like, "Don't you dare crack another one. It's 5 p.m. You know you're not going to sleep. You already have problems with insomnia." But so we sat. So now I get two joyful things at once: this conversation and my Diet Coke. It's the best day of the week. So we sat down and mapped it out, and then I would look at the outline when I would start to write, because that's kind of what I prefer. You know, I could prefer to work. It's easier for me to write when I know where I'm going, when I have, you know, I'm heading in a particular direction. And I couldn't do that for a section.
Wow.
And I felt like a fraud. I'm like, how can I write a book about my life when I can't physically bring myself to write about living with my mom during those years? And it wasn't even being on welfare. It was really the emotional heft of really feeling through my writing of having lost her. And it felt like I was losing her again in the process of writing that.
Wow.
So it was very, very difficult. But then, you know, also looking at the reality of having been raised by my grandparents, and particularly my grandmother, and looking then at, well, here's the love I lost, and here's the love that not only that I lost, but that was, you know, taken from me, and or
it took itself from you, which is that's the worst part. Yeah.
Just taken away from me. And she just, you know, just took it. And then also looking at this kind of, what at the time I would view as a very limited sense of love that I was able to get.
Yeah.
And that was, so those two bookends were very surprisingly difficult to write, because I just didn't expect to struggle with that. You know, I thought, well, this is the hardest part of my life here in the middle, that I'm writing about here, but
it doesn't show.
Wasn't.
It doesn't show, Danielle. Like, that's the thing, that the first third of the book is it has an accelerated, joyful, effervescent, like pop rocks, you know, up your nose kind of sensation that is extraordinary, and it feels like it wrote itself. And this is why writing is an art and a craft, because obviously it didn't. And you know, one thing that I wanted to talk to you about, writing about family, but I'm going to circle back to that if I remember to. There's so many things I want to ask you, but I know. But right now, I want to ask you about, you know, one thing that a lot of times people will say, I have a story that I want to tell. I want to write a book, but I don't know. They don't know whether they want to invest their time, their energy. You know, this is the crazy thing about creativity, is that it's such a profoundly weird thing to do, to take your life force, knowing that you only have a certain amount of time on earth, and to pour it into doing something that you don't even know if it will work, or if it's good, or if anybody will want it. And so when people ask me, like, basically to make a case for why they should go through the trouble to write a book or to make a piece of art, that the only thing I can assure them is that they will be a different person on the other side of that experience than they were at the beginning. And that's the only thing that is ever promised. You can't promise that it will be good. You can't promise anybody will like it or anyone will read it, but you can't be the same person on the other end of a creative project, especially of this magnitude. And so I wanted to know what you felt that the writing of this has done to you, for you, with you?
That's again another beautiful question. I I think this book has given me peace,
Mm.
if I can, categorize it in that way, in that these are no longer feelings that I'm wrestling with or thinking about how do I synthesize this into my life, or how do I talk about it, or how do I get through it. I have a real peace in my life right now. Every day is, calm and happy. And so it's given me this reality that I really fought for so long, because one of my biggest fears was always that I would not be able to take care of myself. Um, and in writing this book, I realized that, yes, in the physical world, I can take care of myself, but it made me realize how much work I've done to have such a full emotional life, and to be able to have people in my life in ways that I never saw in my family, and never saw them connect to people in the way that I'm able to connect to people. And so it removed a lot of fear for me,
Yeah.
which I didn't, again, like fear that I wasn't quite aware that I was carrying. But I feel really more confident than I've ever felt before, strangely. Um, yeah, it's a confidence and peace, I think, is how I've been changed by this. And on the other side of it, I'm definitely different from the person that was writing it,
Wow.
4 years ago.
Wow. I heard you say in an interview that you felt like you were 43 years old before you, like your nervous system, started to finally settle from the events of childhood, and the amount of work, psychological, mental health work, emotional work that you've had to put into that. And I was thinking, I kind of want to read that book. Like,
Yeah.
I kind of want to know, because I think that's the question a lot of us have is, okay, so we all survived. I always think of childhood as having been a non-consensual event. my, my, my beloved friend Ann Patchett, whenever people ask her why she doesn't have children, she said, I would never inflict such a degradation and humiliation of childhood upon anybody that I cared about. It is the most degrading state that a person can be in. You have no power. You have no control. It is totally non-consensual.
Oh,
Why
I
would I
want to
do
stitch
that?
that on a pillow. It's so true.
It's so true, right? You just land in the middle of, like, you're dropped into the middle of this like generations long drama with all these characters. You're like, these are the people that are my fucking family. Like, this is,
And no one's done any work on themselves
no,
until I got here.
and they like throw you in, and they're like, and go, cameras rolling, and now you have to figure out how to, like, and I've also heard, a friend of mine always says that the only thing you have to do with your childhood is to survive it. That's it. Like, if you survived it, great. Like,
You're
that is,
ahead of the curve.
you got through the, but then comes, like, now for the next decades of my life, how do I synthesize this? How do I integrate this? How do I, one of the questions I had for you was about trust. I would imagine that, given the circumstances of your childhood, that trust would be a very underdeveloped muscle in you. That self-reliance, or as I've also heard it said, toxic self-reliance, like, you were getting your, like, there's a moment in the book where you get your pale blue New York State employment card when you're 14 years old, and I like pumped my fist in the air, because I'm like, it's part of the heist scene. I'm like, she's gonna get out of this town, she's gonna get a job, she's gonna save money. And then when you bought that car, I'm like, she's got a car now, like, she's gonna make it. Like, I was like rooting for you. So obviously your life, your grandmother, the circumstances of your culture taught you how to take care of yourself, and in a way that's the easy part. The harder part is, how do you trust another human being? How do you share true vulnerability with anybody when the rug, the floor, and the ground can be ripped out from under you? That's the part that is not so simple. So I was wondering if you had any wisdom for anybody. This is only for those of you who are raised in dysfunctional families, so that's not many of you.
Surprisingly, there are a lot of us.
Those of you who had perfect families, you can just go, like, get a cup of coffee while Danielle answers this question. I'm asking
your Philly Diet Coke.
I'm asking for a friend. Go ahead.
And I do believe that the first difference there for me, or the first thing I wanted to point out, is that I had to learn that there was a difference between taking care of myself and caring for myself. And that is a huge difference. right? It's
Say
a
that
big
again.
divide.
Everybody listen to this and put that on a pillow. Go, go, go. Say it again.
I'm stitching pillows. That's my new job. No more books, stitching pillows. But I had to learn the difference between taking care of myself and caring for myself.
Wow.
And
Wow.
the care that I had to develop for myself is what will now impact my relationships. And that's why I said, you know, I don't feel like I really learned how to live this life until I was 43, because it wasn't until then that I was able to have that understanding, and kind of let the armor down a little bit, because the problem with and the toxicity of self-reliance is that you keep building up bricks of, well, now I'm going to do this by myself, and now I'm doing this by myself, and now nobody can get in because I can't even see anybody anymore.
Right.
And you know, I read in the comments, someone asked if I still know how to fix a car. No, because you have to be a computer engineer to fix cars now.
Yeah.
But you know, but on the flip side of that, I did decide to renovate my own kitchen in this house I just bought for no reason. I can hire someone. So I'm trying to like learn those steps of like, no, get someone else to do the plumbing, Danielle, you idiot. Like, you don't have to do everything.
Danielle, you're a national cultural treasure. You don't need to be fixing your own plumbing. We know you could if you had to. That's the thing. It's taken me years to learn this too. We had a flood, and I had a flood in my house a couple of years ago during a hurricane, and the flood water was pouring into the basement. And I was like, I actually know how to siphon out a basement. Like
Exactly.
I'm like, I'm going to get 90 foot of hose. I'm going to put it together. I'm going to put it down there. I'm going to go down on the other side of the bottom of the hill, and I'm going to suck on that hose till I siphon out and I did. And I don't want to brag, but I can siphon out a basement through a 90-foot hose. People.
Oh my God. You're like, I'm using gravity. I'm using everything I can.
I mean, it's cool, but like also, you can also call somebody to help you. This is the thing. The last thing I always think of is that you can call somebody to help you.
Exactly. And that also extends to, again, your emotional life, which took me so long. I think that was such a major part of my own depression, has been for so long feeling like nobody can help me with this and nobody can take any of this pressure off. And so it didn't happen all at once. It was like kind of chunks falling off of a glacier, you know, like I just bit by bit, the more I revealed, the more people I let into my life, the more friends I had, the more, you know, good romantic relationships that I had, the more I was able to eventually, it kind of all whittled it down, to that core of actual love and actual care. So I think that it wasn't, you know, I would say to people that are, if you're struggling with this, that it wasn't all at once, and it wasn't through one person or through one particular thing. I think it's really cultivating something from the inside that helps you understand yourself enough to communicate who you are, and then you will find your people, and you will find the people that you can let those chunks go with, and they will help you carry it. And it's really been a truly beautiful part of my life. You know, I don't like the notion of being self-made, particularly in my own life. Like you said, there's a lot of stuff that I know I can do, but I wouldn't have the life I have without so many people who are in it and have been in it. And so I try to take that lesson from whoever is lucky. You know, I'm still so lucky to have so many people in my life that I can count in that group. And I just try to take the lessons from them for however long that we're together, whether it's, you know, a year or 30 years. I have a friend that lives down the road that I've been friends with for over 30 years.
Isn't that the most amazing thing?
Like, it truly is. It's the only kind of monogamy I believe in.
Listen, let me tell you something. I had this realization recently that I have spent my whole life what I've been looking for from one man is something I could only in the end get from a group of women. And if I had known that a long time ago, it would have been a lot easier for me. And the poor man upon whom I inflicted the desire that he be everything.
If my ex-husband is watching this, I'm sure he's throwing things against the wall right now. Like, how could you drag me through that for 10 years? But it's true. It's so true. And there's such a joy and a life force giving kind of energy that I need. It's not even, it's a requirement in my life.
Yeah.
that I can only get through my friendships and
Yeah.
through, you know, these family connections that I've made with other people. And it's kind of been very freeing, because I've been single for a long time. I've been single for like 6 years, almost 7 maybe.
Peace
But
out.
right, like but I'm not looking for romantic love.
Almost 3 years over here.
Yes. And I think, is that around the time that you had this realization too? Because I think maybe that's what did it for me, was I'm like, oh, it's not really the, you know, I'm not looking at the outside to validate something that I already have.
Yeah. Yeah. I also thought for me, it's a bit of a public service to stop, to stop doing that to people, to stop falling in love with them. It doesn't end well for them.
As a triple Gemini, I can agree.
Oh my God, you are?
Oh yeah. Sun, moon, rising. And I'm like, oh, this needs to be contained. I cannot keep pouring this on anyone.
You know, I think, but there's this thing when you
too.
said caring for yourself, I was thinking that I've always had this deep fear. I'm too much for anybody. I'm too much for anybody. But there's this beautiful thing that's happened in the last few years, which is this slow dawning realization of this little voice inside me that says to me, from me, you're not too much for me.
Yes.
Not too much for me. I love you. I've got you. You know, I can look after you, and I take that on as stewardship, and it's very sweet. It's very different from a way I've ever felt before.
I love hearing that, because I think that it's something, I don't think we hear it. I want to read that book, because I think that's something we don't hear enough about, in that developing a relationship with yourself is a lifelong journey. And the more open you are to that experience, the more I think that enhances the creativity, enhances literally everything in your life.
Spiritual awakening, creative awakening, relational awakening, all of it.
All of it. All of it. And this is kind of a way that it's the start of that journey for me.
Yeah.
But I'm really into it, and I really love it, and I really love, I love how much I like myself. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I've never liked myself this much.
I'm the best roommate I've ever had. We have all the same interests.
Yes. We go to bed at the same time. We're out by 8 p.m.
You like eating popcorn in the bathtub while watching the Great British Baking Show? So do I. I've also realized there's a really big difference between being by yourself and being with yourself. And that's taken a long time as well to recognize, like, the being with yourself is great. Being by yourself, not so good. Okay, I have to ask this question, because I know that all the writers in there will want to know this, because this is a question that never doesn't get asked, which is, how do you solve the incredible dilemma of writing about your family members who are alive, especially when you're sharing devastating truths? How do you do it? People ask me, and I'm like, I don't know. Ask Danielle Henderson.
Send them my way. Send them my way, because for me, that work begins before I sit down to write. And I was on the Good Life Project recently, and I mentioned this to Jonathan, that nothing in my book is a surprise to the people in my family who are still alive, because we've talked about it. And I've been able to be open with them about my experiences growing up for a long time. And it took a long time for me to be open with them. Yeah. So I think if you're still in that early space of, you haven't revealed yourself to your family, of course it's going to be difficult to write about them from your perspective. But I think that, and for some people that will never work, either their family members are shut off from them, or they've, ended relationships. It's not always what works best, but it worked for me to be able to say, I don't care if you read this, because it's true. And right. You were there, and it happened. And so my brother, after he read it, he read an early version of the book, and he said, I'm so sorry that I wasn't there for you as a kid. I didn't know you were going through all of this, turmoil. I didn't know about, your sexual abuse. I didn't know about any of that. And I wish I could have been there for you. And I was like, we were both kids. I didn't expect that from you. We were both going through this in our own ways and finding our way back to each other, thankfully, as adults. But we didn't have that kind of relationship that, that TV after school special, your brother comes in and gives you a hug relationship. Like, if he came in and gave me a hug, I probably would have punched him in the stomach. Like, it was just that's not who we were. But
he was too busy in the woods riding dirt bikes over dead bodies, as you so beautifully described.
Oh my gosh. That's all I ever thought he was doing.
finding dead bodies and then building ramps over them and riding BMX bikes over them with his friends.
And then lighting something on fire.
And then lighting something on fire. Yeah.
But I think that, even I think about people like my great aunt who is, 90 and she's still alive. And, I've talked with her and been very open with her about what happened to me eventually, not when I was younger. But writing about my life it's not difficult for me because I feel like I've learned how to be honest with people in my life.
Right.
And so I just removed that pressure from myself to perform. I know that a lot of people are probably wondering how my mom feels. And that was probably the trickiest part for me, is that I didn't know how she would feel.
Yeah.
And she hates it. She absolutely hates it. And we don't speak to each other anymore. And you kind of have to be prepared for that as well, I think. It's not easy to write about people in a truthful and honest way and always receive love back.
Mm.
It's not. Some people don't like seeing themselves in the way that you have seen them. So that is something that you have to be willing to admit. Even if it doesn't happen, you have to be able to admit that that's a possibility. And
I mean, it's also the case, and this has taken me a long time to realize too, which is it true? So if it's true, to the best of your knowledge, everything that you're writing, then there is a sort of immunity that comes from but this is actually what happened, and if somebody is angry about that, my terrible fear of conflict has always made me think that if somebody is angry, I've got a problem. But the reality is I've learned when I'm angry, it's a real problem for me because anger is a really painful emotion. So if someone else is angry, who is the person in the room who has the problem, me or the person who is angry? It's no, this is not, just because they're igniting doesn't mean that you have to ignite. So yeah.
And that's a part of healing from the trauma too. When you grow up in a family where, you're not quite sure where your emotional life is going to land. For me anyway, I felt like, I have to be prepared on the one hand, and I have to be apologetic on the other hand. So I was always one or the other. I'm ready for a fight, or I'm apologizing for how I've made you feel.
Right.
And it took me so long into my adult life to realize that we're all responsible for our own emotions. And that it doesn't actually help any of my relationships for me to take everything on from everyone. So I completely agree with you that it's not even, I don't even fear making people angry, because I think that that's just another way for us, another opening for us to hopefully talk about those feelings. If you're a person who's healthy enough to do that, my mom's not, but but that's also something where I feel like she has shown me who she is over and over and over again. And this is just a continuation of her showing me who she is. And I didn't expect anything else, and I'm not upset about it. So I think that it's just, you have to kind of just mind your own side of the street in a lot of ways when you're writing about your own life. And my therapist said something to me which was revolutionary, because I said, when I was writing the book, and I'm sure people love this part of every interview where you're like, my therapist said.
But I do, because there's a little signal I get in my brain whenever I know I'm about to hear something that's going to be really impactful in my life that goes, listen, you just said my therapist. I don't know if you could tell. I just went like this. I'm I am always on the search for anything that is going to help me survive this world. I'm like, what did you say, Danielle? What did you say?
Edge of your seat.
Tell me, I'm going to need this, whatever it is.
I was telling her very early on, and I was kind of blocked, and I felt like, oh gosh, I was in one of those moments where I'm like, I don't think I should write this book. I don't think anyone's going to care. I don't think. And then when I really got to the crux of it, I said, it's really difficult because so much of what I experienced was so personal and so, so insular. And I don't know if it's true, and I don't want to offend anybody by not telling the actual full true story. And she said to me is it true for you? And I said, yeah. And she's like, well, then go write your book. Go write your book. You can't, unless you're writing a novel, you'll never know how every single person in that situation felt. So just go write your book. And if they want to, they can go write their book. Just go do it.
I read this book twice, by the way. If anyone is just jumping in, we're talking to Danielle Henderson about her incredible memoir, The Ugly Cry. I can testify. I wrote this book. I read this book twice. I just said I wrote it. That was like a little Freudian wish. I am doing the audiobook.
Going on tour.
I am hoping to be cast in the motion picture as well. I did want to discuss that. I read this book twice, and I don't ever recall a moment where you told me what anyone else was thinking and feeling. You told me what they did. You told me what you were thinking and feeling, but you did not tell me what anybody else was thinking and feeling, and that's why it's your book. And if they don't like it, they can go write their own book about what they were thinking and feeling.
Exactly. Go write your own book. I'm sure you have tons of stories as well.
Yeah.
And that goes doubly for my family members, especially, you know, kind of circling back to that earlier question. Because my brother has so many different experiences than I have growing up in the same house with the same people in the same situation. His stories are so different from mine because we're different people. And we would talk about things, you know, as I was, you know, writing, I'd be kind of going through old pictures and kind of sending him texts and stuff. And he'd say, "Oh, do you remember this?" And I said, "No, I don't, because I didn't do that. You did." He's like, "You should put this in the book." And I'm like, "I'm not doing any of that because one, the book's done, but two, it's not my experience. That's your story to tell."
Not only is childhood a non-consensual event, but every child in the family is raised in a different country. It's like you're from different countries. That's how I feel about me and my sister. I'm like, we came from different countries, even though we were raised in the same family 3 years apart.
And my mom and aunt felt that way. Like, my aunt was like, "Who are you?" We're like, "Who is this woman that I grew up with, that I know intimately, but somehow also know nothing about?"
Weird. It's so profound. Weird. So you are oh God, there's so many things I want to say. Okay, let's go here. You're a film connoisseur. You have an amazing podcast that I absolutely love called I See What You Did. That is such a delight. And I had another moment as I was getting ready for this conversation, another snake with its tail in its mouth moment of like, it's all coming together. There's a line in your book where your grandmother, she sent you out into the world when you were a young woman saying, "If anyone ever puts their hands on you, you cut their pecker right off." To which you add in the book, "Grandma had been encouraging me to castrate men since I was old enough to know what dicks even were." And then I was listening to your episode of I See What You Did, where you and Millie discussed Terminator 2 and RoboCop, two movies that were also extremely important to me in my youth because I was a teenager in the 90s. And you mentioned that one of you guys has or that you both have a T-shirt that says, "Remember," the T-shirt says, "Remember when RoboCop shot that dude in the dick?" And I was like, when you and I were getting ready for this interview, I'm like, please tell me it's true that you have this T-shirt. And you promised to wear it, and it's there. Oh my God.
I'm wearing it. Remember that time RoboCop shot that dude in the dick? It's a T-shirt from Pink Bike Ralph is the name of the person that made this shirt. Pink Bike Ralph. And when I saw this shirt, I almost had a meltdown. I'm like, I have to buy this for everyone I know. And the only person that would get it is Millie, so I got it for her. And it's an incredible T-shirt to wear in public, which I usually do with like a cardigan or a jacket over. But it's an incredible shirt to wear in public because people will either just laugh and keep walking, or they want to talk to you for 3 hours.
Right.
It's wonderful.
Completely. They're like, "I love you. We need to be together forever because this is the greatest thing in the entire world."
RoboCop is so infinitely quotable. And
so
Ralph,
good.
who made the shirt, he listened to that episode and then sent Millie and I very special shirts just for us that have my other favorite quote from RoboCop. When the guy's holding the mayor hostage and he says, first, don't fuck with me. Second, get me a coffee. So now I have two incredible RoboCop T-shirts.
First, don't fuck with me. Second, get me coffee. That could be, wait a minute. That could be the title of your next memoir.
There it is. Don't fuck with me. Get me a coffee.
Don't fuck with me. Get me coffee. Oh man, it's such a good title.
It is words to live by.
you have said about yourself that your resume looks like somebody who's been on the run from the law. That you went to school to study fashion. One of my readers on followers on Instagram was wanting to hear more about that. Like, what did that turn into in your life, and when did you move out of that? You traveled extensively after you left home. You lived in Alaska for 4 years under an assumed name. No, I don't know about that. You also write, you're a TV writer, you're a showrunner now. You're running your own show, which I think you can't talk about because is that right?
It hasn't been.
Is this with Lena? Is this the one you're doing with Lena? Okay.
Yeah.
Can you tell us whatever you are allowed to tell us about it? Is it nothing?
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of nothing, but it's a show with Lena Waithe for Amazon, and we're developing a show about open relationships.
Whoa! Oh my God. Okay, so that's happening. Tell me, like, this. When you look at your resume and you see all of this, and of course you're a memoirist, and you wrote for magazines, and you blogged for years. Like, you've done so much across so many different mediums. Again, grammar. I don't know. You've done a lot of different shit.
Don't worry about it.
You've done a lot of different shit. Is that the sign of a rapacious mind that wants to try everything? Is it the sign of, like, this is how you cobble together a career in medium? Is different mediums help me, different ways of expression,
platforms?
Platforms. Thank you. Is it what do you see looking at it from a slight detached view when you look back on the way that your life has been for the last 20 years? What is it a sign of?
I think it's a sign of survival, because there was no plan. There was never a plan. So it's just, I look at everything I've done and I'm like, yeah, you were trying to pay rent. You were trying to survive. You were trying to develop an emotional life. You were trying to connect with people. You were trying to get out of a bad situation. It's survival, pure and simple. And throughout that, the creative side has carried me through those moments when I wasn't making a living in a creative way. And it just kind of fortified my heart. That's when that was useful for me in that way. But yeah, fashion design was something I've always been so interested in. It's just this beautiful art form. And I, 90s kid, I watched House of Style. I loved Todd Oldham. Like, I just, could not. And I was creative, and seeing people who were creative in that way was so incredibly cool to me. And I used to go to the thrift store and get stuff to cut up because I couldn't afford fabric. So it kind of was like a little bit Molly Ringwald.
I wasn't going to say it, but I was thinking it.
Molly Ringwald in the movie with Harry Stanton, where she makes the pink dress.
It's so good. Yeah, it's such a good scene. Yeah,
it's such a great scene. It's so, again, it's fortifying. So when I went to college originally, I kind of didn't know what I was doing because no one in my family had been to college, and I was paying for it by myself, and my friends helped me get into school and taught me how to do it. But I went to a school that wasn't particularly arts focused. And so it was a very small school in Northampton, Massachusetts, called LaSalle. And at the time, it was an all women's college. So I thought, well, this is going to be cool because I'm going to have friends. It'll be like a slumber party. It was not.
No.
And also, no, it was fine. But I think, again, like at the time, LaSalle was kind of like, it was like 13th grade for rich kids. Like,
wow.
Women who didn't know what they wanted to do, but if they went to 4 years of college, their dad would buy them a horse.
Oh, so just like your upbringing a lot.
Complete. I mean, we were so similar that's I think where it was really.
Yeah.
That's where the divide came.
Yeah, that's hard. That's hard when you have so much in common with people.
I just wanted more friction. I wanted more of a challenge. And then the academic side, I'm like, well, this isn't great either. Like, what am I doing? But so I've maintained this love of creativity and creating clothing, but just for myself. I realized I didn't want to turn this into a career. I don't want the stress and pressure of making these clothes for other people. I didn't know anything about the business. I wasn't learning anything about the business. So I still have the same sewing machine I've had since I was 12. And it's got a Doug sticker on it that says, way to go. Just so I can always constantly date myself.
So good. So good.
And I just, I sew for myself now. Like, I've got 27 windows in this house. I'm going to make curtains, and, I'm going to make you know, when my clothing is, you know, when I have rips or tears or need to replace a button, I can do that myself. I can do like mending and.
It's the plumbing of a wardrobe.
It's the plumbing of a. I could go to a store. I'm gonna make my own shirt.
Gonna make my own shirt. You mentioned your new house, so you just moved back to Warwick. Are you back in Warwick? So you moved back to be with your grandmother, and you've moved her in with you. Almost. And there's a moment in the book. Oh, it's so beautiful. You say, so your grandmother's got dementia now, and you write in the book that you had hired a nurse for her, and you write. You say, she constantly tells me that I shouldn't waste the money, but that she's fine on her own. When I remind her that I'm a television writer now, she sucks in her breath and goes, oh my God, Danny, never mind. You're a rich bitch. And you say, I'm not, but I can't afford to take care of us both. And that's more than I ever thought I would be able to do.
Yeah.
Oh, followed by you writing about, you said, we became each other's lifeline, Grandma and me. When I was born and the nurse held me like a football, when I opened my creepy little eyes, the first person I saw was my grandmother. I opened my eyes and saw the love of my life. Oh, Danielle. It's so beautiful.
Thank you.
Has she
I cried when I wrote it.
Oh my God, I cried. I'm going to cry again. Has she read it?
She's listening to the audiobook now.
The one that I recorded?
Yes, she loves your voice. She's like, oh, I wish this woman was my granddaughter.
Didn't I really bring her to life? I feel like I
think you really did the voice well. You know? It was an interesting choice to do the voices all in like a British accent, but I loved it.
Well, I thought any other way would be frankly problematic.
Right. I loved it. I loved it.
I just thought, let's just dodge all of that. Let's just do a British accent. I'll just do like received British or whatever it's called.
Getting Maggie Smith on board.
I know.
Sterling choices.
I know.
She is loving it. And what's so wild about her now is that, you know, I see her every day. We have coffee, we have dinner, whatever. I see her every day. And she's still living in her apartment right now. But I brought her a copy of the book. Someone who was visiting took it. I don't know who it was. So just the other day, I brought her another copy of the book, and I also had this Mudwalker figurine from The Walking Dead. So I brought her both, and she opened the figurine, and she was laughing. And then I said, oh, and I brought you another copy of my book, thinking this isn't going to be a big deal because she's already seen it. And she just burst into tears, and she was kind of holding it, and she said, oh, you wrote a book. And I said, oh my God. And it just dawned on me that like, this is, again, part of her short-term memory loss is that she doesn't always remember. So she asks me about stuff constantly. And when she listens to it, you know, when she turns it on every day, she'll say, oh yeah, you wrote a book.
Wow.
But her long-term memory is fine. And she loves hearing those stories. And she kind of, you know, it puts her in a different space in her head that I can see is more calming to her because she loves because that's where she feels comfortable.
Right.
She's not scared. In her day-to-day life, when she's usually scared when she can't remember something. So when she's reliving these old stories, it's just like, you know, life coming back into her. And she's also, again, still very much herself. So I bought a house. When I lived here, I was a townie. And I lived in town, and I bought a house kind of on the outskirts of town. And it's a little farm, and it's like this big 5-bedroom farmhouse. And, you know, she's going to have the whole bottom floor, and she's going to have her, because she wants to still have her independence, you know? So she's going to have her, like I'm redoing her bathroom right now. I'm doing the tile and grout. I might not have somebody do the toilet, but I'm doing the tile.
Danielle, you're a cultural national treasure. Do not grout.
Also, I'm sure that my editor's like, you have things to write.
Yeah. We want that. We've got that, like, you know, bring me coffee book coming. So just
all the people I'm working with at TV are like, you have an actual episode to write. But no, I'm tiling the bathroom. But I keep telling her this, you know, I bring her over to the house, and every time I bring her, she's like, oh, this is so beautiful. And like, but she doesn't remember that it's me who bought the house here. She'll be like, somebody bought a house here. And so she comes in the other day, and we're having lunch tomorrow too, but she comes in the other day, and I showed her, like, you know, this is going to be your bedroom, and this is going to be your bathroom, and this is going to be your living room. and the kitchen is big enough that you can move your wheelchair around, and like you can get, it's going to be great, right? And she looks at me and she goes, "Ugh, I don't know if I want to move in here. Like, I don't want to see a mouse or something." And I'm like, why did I just buy this huge house in this damn town? And you're not even going to move in with me? Every other day she tells me she's not moving in. Every other day. And I'm like, am I going to have to kidnap this woman? Like, hold her against her will? She's like, every day it's something different. Like, oh, you have a cat. And I'm like, yeah, I've had a cat for 6 years.
Well, tell her to put it together. You've got a cat. There won't be mice.
Yeah.
She's going to be fine. This is all like,
Exactly.
she just answered her own question.
Oh, she constantly is like, oh, it has a second floor. You never have to go upstairs. It's going to be like, she just finds these reasons. I just painted, I'm building myself a library, and I just painted, and I painted it black. And the shelves are black, and it's like
cool.
dark and cozy, and it's going to be wonderful. And she goes, "Ah, I can't. That room looks like a black hole." And I'm like, "You don't have to go in it. Like, what is wrong with you? You have a whole house to live in."
You've got to start guilting her. Do you know how many grandmothers wish that their
Exactly.
grandchildren would buy them a house and set them up for life?
For real. And I'm like, we were laughing so hard the other day because she said, again, like, oh, I don't know. And I said, listen, I'm selling the house. I'm buying an apartment in London. You're never going to see me again. And she just started cracking up.
Wow.
It feels like I'm getting it ready for her when she's ready to move in. I don't want to force it. And, you know, we're going to do some weekends and kind of ease her into it.
Nice.
For the dementia side
It's
of
her
things.
country house.
It's her
Like,
little
she's got her
vacation.
city, she's got her town, she's got her apartment, and then this is her country house. That'll.
Exactly.
Oh.
Exactly. So I'm hoping she moves in, because if not, I am selling this house.
Look, it's a very strong market right now for houses outside of New York that have jet black libraries and wheelchair accessible kitchens. You're going to do great. You're going to kill.
Like 3 acres full of groundhogs. Like, come, please take this
Yeah,
out.
you're going to do great. This is just another thing on your resumes. You're going to become a house flipper. It's going to be great.
It's going to be wonderful.
Danielle,
Yeah.
this has been such a delight talking to you. And again, I don't know who would have jumped in at the end, but we have been discussing the extraordinary memoir, The Ugly Cry by Danielle Henderson. Buy it, read it. It is one of the best books of the year. It's fabulous. It's extraordinary. You're fabulous and extraordinary. You make it look easy. You make it look easy, and I know that it isn't, and that's what's so astonishing about your work. And as far as what you've created from your life out of what you had to go through, I can only quote your sewing machine and say, good job. Good job.
Thank you. Thank you so, truly thank you so much. I could talk to you for absolute ever. But thank
Likewise.
you for bringing me to this beautiful audience, and thank you everyone who joined us. And yeah, please read my book, and I'm available for any updates you need about this grandma situation or anything else.
I'm gonna need updates. Now hang on a second. I want you to smile so I can get for once a decent shot to put as our cover. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay.
Do it again.
Okay, good. I got it.
Cool.
Okay. It's such a struggle to find ones where we're both not like looking like we just got hit in the face.
My eyes are always half closed because my cheeks are so big, so it's like every picture. But true joy.
Danielle,
we'll
you're wonderful. All blessings on your future endeavors. I hope I get to see you again. Actually, no, Warwick. I had friends who used to live there, but that's a story for another day.
Oh my goodness! Come and bring a hammer.
I'll bring a siphoning hose. That's my strength.
Yes, bring the siphoning hose. I'll throw out the wet back. Bring the siphoning hose.
Good luck on your grouting. Give your grandmother a hug from all of us.
You.
She is epic. You are epic, and your stories.
Bye. Bye, guys.